scripture reading today is Exodus 20:1 through 11. Then God began to speak directly to all the people. Eternal One, I am the eternal, your God. I led you out of Egypt and liberated you from the lives of slavery and oppression. You are not to serve any other God before me. You are not to make any idol or images of other gods. In fact, you are not to make any images of anything in the heavens above, on the earth below, or in the waters beneath. You are not to bow down and serve any image, for I, the eternal, your God, am a jealous God. As for those who are not loyal to me, their children will endure the consequences of their sins for 3 or 4 generations. But for those who love me and keep my directives, their children will experience my loyal love for 1,000 generations. You are not to use my name for your own idle purposes, for the Eternal will punish anyone who treats his name as anything less than sacred. You and your family are to remember the Sabbath day, set it apart, and keep it holy. You have 6 days to do all your work, but the 7th day is to be different. It is the Sabbath of the Eternal your God. Keep it holy by not doing any work, not you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, or any outside living among you. For the Eternal made the heavens above, the earth below, the seas, and all the creatures in them in 6 days. Then, on the 7th day, he rested. That is why he blessed the Sabbath day and made it sacred.
And continuing on in verse 12. You're to honor your father and mother. If you do, you and your children will live long and well in the land of the Eternal, your God, the land that he has promised to give you. You're not to murder. You're not to commit adultery. You're not to take what is not yours. You're not to give false testimony against your neighbor. You're not to covet what your neighbor has, or set your heart on getting his house, his wife, his male or female servants, his ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. As all the people witnessed the signs of God's presence, the blast of the ram's horn, the roaring thunder, the flashing lightning, and the smoke-covered mountain, they shook with fear and astonishment, and wisely kept their distance. The Israelites said to Moses, "We're afraid to have God speak directly to us. We are certain that we will die. You speak to us instead. We promise to listen." Moses said, "Don't be afraid. These powerful manifestations are God's way of instilling awe and fear in you, so that you will not sin. He's testing you for your own good." But everyone remained far away from the mountain as Moses began moving toward the thick, dark cloud where God was. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
As you can see, I have provided everything a child might need. As I was saying, hey, off!
Somebody broke that.
Clearly we need to set some rules. Rule number 1, you will not touch anything.
What about the floor?
Yes, you may touch the floor.
What about the air?
Yes, you may touch the air.
What about this?
Where did you get that?
Found it.
Okay, rule number 2, you will not bother me while I'm working. Rule number 3, you will not cry, or whine, or laugh, or giggle, or sneeze, or bark, or fart.
No annoying sounds.
Alright?
Does this count as annoying?
new commands and a new covenant. Or if that's too churchy a language for you, new rules and a new relationship. That makes it a little better. Today we're going to be in chapter 5 of the story. So if you have your copy of the story, everybody reading their copy of the story? Yeah. People who didn't raise their hands, we'll have to talk. Yeah, chapter 5 of the story. And we don't like rules, do we? In fact, my youth ministry professor at college, he used to say this all the time. He would say, rules without relationship lead to rebellion. Rules without relationship lead to rebellion. Just like those girls in this clip, they had no real relationship with the big bald guy, Gru. And so they just naturally rebel. That's the way that we live our lives, right? We automatically fight back against rules. Now, we're picking up the story in chapter 5, if you haven't heard me say that yet. And we've been following a guy by the name of Moses. Everybody say Moses. Moses. Now, Moses is leading a large group of people, somewhere around 1 to 3 million people. 1 to 3 million people. And he's leading them out of slavery. God has done these incredible things. If you remember from 2 weeks ago, God did these miraculous, incredible, unbelievable things that we like to call plagues. Right? He was trying to let the Egyptians know they needed to let my people go. Right? I didn't mean to rhyme, but it just came out that way. And so God did all sorts of things. He turned the Nile River into blood. He turned a staff into a snake. He brought a plague of frogs and a plague of gnats and darkness and locusts and all sorts of things. And then, when Pharaoh finally said, okay, take your people, send them away, they got to the Red Sea. How many people remember this story? They get to the Red Sea, and all the people say, well, thanks, Moses. You brought us out here to die. Moses says, well, just hang on a second. Now, we're following an amazing God, so I'm going to raise my staff, and the waters part. They cross on dry land. 1 to 3 million people crossing on dry land. This wasn't a quick journey. It was a long trip across the Red Sea. The Egyptians, they try and follow because they realize their huge workforce is gone. They need somebody to do work around here, so they try and catch up. They get in the middle of the Red Sea. The Israelites are already crossed over, and God says, okay, you're safe. No more worry. But that doesn't stop the people, right? They leave Egypt, which was set up with rules. They were bad rules, they were tyrannical rules, dictator-type rules, but they were rules. There was guidelines, there was structure. They knew, okay, I wake up and I make bricks all day long. After I make bricks, then I go to bed. Maybe I eat once or so in there. Then I wake up the next morning and I make bricks. I mean, that's how their day went. We need structure. My wife and I, when we were at the hospital the first couple weeks, we seemed kind of dazed a little bit because we had lost all sense of structure, right? So we had to come up with a schedule by the hour, because I'm detailed like that, of what we were going to do. It helps to have structure. It helps to have rules. But rules without relationship lead to rebellion. If you have a Bible, we're going to be right around Exodus 19 here shortly. And the people have left Egypt where there were rules, there was guidelines, there was clear leadership. And now they're headed out into the wilderness, following a cloud. Yeah, we give them a hard time because they complained a lot, but you would too. There's one guy who isn't so sure of himself, Moses, trying to lead 3 million people, and he's following a cloud. Huh? Exodus 19. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the house of Jacob and what you are to tell the people of Israel." It's the same group of people, if you remember. "You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. God is saying, look, you guys were there. You saw what happened. You saw the plagues. You saw the Nile. You saw the Red Sea. And then everybody go. And oh gosh, I need sleep. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt. He's trying to say, look, I've proven it to you, right? You can trust me. I am here. I provide. I protect. I deliver. I brought you, I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. That's not a literal phrase there, okay? There weren't giant eagles that swept down and grabbed 3 million Israelites. It's a term of royal deliverance, right? You were saved in a majestic way. Don't ask me to make that noise again. I can't. He says, and I brought you to myself. See, that was the whole purpose of them leaving Egypt. If you remember, Moses comes in to talk to Pharaoh and he says, I need my people to go so that they can go into the wilderness and worship God. I want my people to go worship God, experience God, be with God in an intimate way. And God says, look, I have shown you what I did to Egypt, this mighty army, this guy who claimed to be God on earth, and I delivered you, and I brought you here to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. God says, look, this relationship, this bond that we have, is going to be twofold. Right? If you obey me fully, rules, commandments, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, covenant is like a promise, but it has a relationship aspect to it. It's a promise kept because we have relationship. Then out of all the nations, you will be my treasured possession. Jesus later on in the Bible talks about a woman who has a pearl of great price. And talks about a woman who has a coin that she lost, and she searches her entire house just to find this one coin. Do you have something in your life that is your treasured possession? That thing that was autographed by that you keep up on the mantle? That artwork that your kid made when they were 3 that you have still tacked to your refrigerator 15 years later? Treasured possession. It's something that's special, set aside, very valuable in a sentimental way, even if the rest of the world doesn't see it as valuable. He says, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, let's maintain this relationship, then out of all the nations, everyone on earth, you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Priests were set aside, right? There were certain things that the priests didn't do. They only ate certain things. They only performed certain tasks. They weren't involved in the everyday running of the nation. They were set aside. And a holy nation, our faith and formation class, our confirmation class, learned last 2 weeks ago what holy means. It means separate, set aside, special, unique, different. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. And so these people need structure. Just like a body needs a skeleton, right? If you don't have a skeleton, you're just a pile of goo. We need a skeleton, a structure. We need some rules, some guidelines. Just so that we know what a holy nation looks like. But rules without relationship leads to rebellion. And God tries to provide some rules. We call them the 10 Commandments. How many people have ever heard of the 10 Commandments? Yeah, that's good. We read them a little bit earlier, Trudy and I. We like rules, as long as they only apply to other people. You're laughing because you know it's true. We like rules as long as they only apply to other people. If you have a brother or sister, right? We like it when they get in trouble. But if we do the exact same thing and we get in trouble, we say, that's not fair. I didn't do it. Or, okay, that's kind of a juvenile example. How about this? We go to the Seneca football game. Go Fighting Irish. And go to the Seneca football game, and you're sitting there up in the stands, got your green war paint on, you're ready to go, involved in the game. And, let's say there's a bad hit. The refs make the call. They throw the flag. And the bad hit is against your team. And you're like, oh, man, good call, ref. Good call. That other team, man, they're doing stuff. They're fighting dirty. Oh, but then when the flag is thrown against your team. Come on, ref, what are you doing? Do you need me to do your job? Do you need a pair of glasses? Are the lights too bright? Any sporting event. Doesn't matter whose side you're on. Your side is always on the wrong side of justice. We like rules as long as they only apply to other people. Or maybe sports aren't your thing. Okay, maybe we need a different example. How about traffic? Yeah, we're driving down the interstate, minding our own business. That guy's gonna cause an accident. Oh no, I gotta get to work. Yeah. Or, how about this? We were at the hospital a couple weeks ago, and we're riding in the shuttle back from the hospital over to Ronald McDonald House where we're staying. And we're riding in the shuttle, and we come to this intersection, and this SUV over here comes up and just keeps going. Apparently, the stop sign became invisible at that time of day, and so they just missed it. They didn't even brake or anything. Just looked out over at us as they're driving past, like, okay. And we all kind of laughed, like, oh, well, people aren't following the rules. The other night, Rachel and I were on our way to the hospital. We were driving. It was late. I was on Benadryl, which apparently gives you marked drowsiness. So I'm on my way. I'm driving. And if you've ever been back behind the hospital up in Loyola, there are a lot of stop signs. And it's 9 o'clock and there's nobody there. And so I kind of didn't totally stop. I slowed and go. Anybody ever done that? Is it just me? Well, apparently the policeman who was sitting in the darkened parking lot didn't like my methods. And so he pulled me over and says, hey, you kind of missed that stop sign back there. I can't deny it. Can't deny it. We like rules as long as they only apply to other people. Now, the Israelites, the Hebrews, the people of Jacob, the people of Israel, they needed rules. They needed guidelines. But they didn't necessarily like them. In fact, after years and years and years and years of having these rules, they still didn't like them. They rebelled. There were some people who tried to keep the rules very strict. Oh, you need to do this and this and this and this and this. There's something like 600, that might be a little high, 600 or so commands, laws in the Old Testament. Like we think 10 is bad. Like I can handle 10. Maybe. On a good day. If I'm sleeping. But, yeah. And people would hold really tightly to these. These people were known as Pharisees. And they would make sure that you were following the rules very, very closely. And it led to people rebelling. The harder you squeeze somebody, the more that they fight back. But the thing about rules is, rules reveal. Rules reveal. They reveal when we break the rules. It's hard to break the law when there is none, right? But when you have strict guidelines that say, look, if you're killing people, that's bad. If you're stealing, that's not right. Then suddenly we look at some of our behaviors and we go, wow, I must be doing something wrong. I must be falling short at some level. I must be not quite living up to this treasure. See, the law was given not to save people, but to show them that they needed saving. See, we think, well, why didn't Jesus just come in the Old Testament? Why did the people have to go through all this stuff, hundreds and hundreds of years of laws and rules and regulations? It's because they needed to know that they needed to be saved. Nobody wants to be rescued if they don't think they need it. Rules reveal where we need to be rescued. Now, for a long, long time, the church was really good at this, at the rules, right? Everybody had to look a certain way, dress a certain way, stand a certain time, sing a certain song, preach a certain way, stand in a certain place, sit at a certain place, do all these certain things. Stand up, sit down, bring the right animal, kill it, at the right time of year. I mean, we had all these rules that we were really good at for years and years and years and years and years. And at some point, there came a moment where the church decided, wait a minute, rules without relationship lead to rebellion. We've got to change this around a little bit. There's something missing. We need to have more relationship. That's what we're missing in church. We need the relationship. We need the love. Right? How many people alive during the 60s? 60s. Yeah. Where's the love? Right? Everybody just wants to be loved. Why can't we all just be loved, man? We don't need the government holding us down. We don't need structure or rules. We just need love. Well, that's fantastic. And love does save. Jesus, when he was asked, what's the greatest commandment? He said, I'll give you two. Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. But funny enough, it wasn't too long after that Jesus said, if you love me, you'll obey my commands. Jesus, we don't need commands. We don't need law or rules or government. We just need love. I don't need accountability. I don't need discipline. I don't need commitment. See, some of us have just become Christian hippies. We like to love. We like everybody to come in. Everybody's welcome, and you are. Jesus loves me just as I am, man. That's right. But he also loves you enough not to leave you there. Love. And so the people of Israel, they say, we don't need those rules. Moses is up on the mountain. He's taking too long. I'm just going to keep his voice. He's taking too long, man. We need a God we can see, and we need a God we can feel. Aaron, you haven't done anything much. Why don't you build us something? Make us a cow. And so Aaron says, well, I've got 3 million people telling me to do something. I'm not going to argue. I don't want to start a riot. So how about this? Everybody give me all your gold. We'll melt it all down. We'll form it into a cow, because I guess that's the only template he had, was cow. We'll make a golden cow. And tell you what, we'll have a festival to the Lord. Yeah, we'll put a nameplate at the bottom of the cow that says, the Lord. And we'll worship him, and it'll be like, yeah, this is God, this is love. We don't need rules. Who cares about Moses? I don't know what he's doing. He's taking too long. Let's just worship the cow. And the funny thing is, as the people are bowing down to this cow, as Aaron is melting this cow down and forming it, as he's creating this graven image and using the Lord's name in vain, God is up on a mountain telling Moses, now the first commandment and the second commandment, don't take the Lord's name in vain, don't create any graved images. I am the Lord your God. As God is giving Moses the first 2 commandments, the people of Israel are breaking them. People like to break the rules, right? We think we can just live without rules, that relationship is all we need. And while a relationship with Jesus, a relationship with people is at the heart of who we are, a body with no skeleton is just goo. Relationship without rules leads to to rupture. Rupturing is a breaking, a tearing of a muscle. See, what happens is God looks down and he sees these people acting a fool, dancing around this golden cow, claiming, oh, this is God. And it breaks his heart. He says, Moses, look at what your people are doing. They're stiff-necked. They're corrupt. I can't believe this happened again. He says, Moses, you just stand to the side. I'm going to destroy everything. Just going to hit reset and start back with you, Moses. And Moses pleads for their life. He begs for the Israelites. If you remember this in chapter 5 of the story, he says, God, this isn't you, right? We need relationship. We want people to realize that you are love. And I know they need these rules, but give them a second chance. And God says, okay. Just testing you. Making sure. God's heart was broken. Another example. Relationship without rules leads to rupture. Relationship which is all about emotions and heart, right? Who needs rules? We don't need commitments or accountability. Eventually, if that is taken just to its end, it will lead to what it was trying to protect. A broken heart. Just like rules, which try and provide structure and order, if they don't have a relationship aspect, taken to their extreme end, will lead to rebellion, a breaking of the rules. Relationship without any structure or rules leads to a broken relationship. So the question is, do you really love God? Or do you just want to be friends with benefits? Do you really love God, or do you just want to be friends with benefits? For those of you who don't know, it's kind of a trendy term. Friends with benefits is essentially when you don't date somebody, you don't get married, you just use them to meet your own desires. Either financially, physically, emotionally, whatever it is. There's no commitment, there's no accountability. And our culture says, friends with benefits, that's cool, man. That's all right. It's all about the love. We just want to feel good. But at the end of the day, people go home with broken hearts. People say, I thought we had something. I thought you loved me. No, man. I was just using you. Do we love God, or are we just using Him to meet our own desires? God, you're my friend. God, you're my buddy. I love you. I'm going to sing songs until things happen and you don't provide what I want. And then we're not friends anymore. Relationships reflect. Rules reveal where we fall short, where we mess up. Relationships reflect. Our relationship with one another, with the people around us, is a reflection of our relationship with God. The people who went through our last Bible study, Experiencing God, wrote about this. Our relationship with others is a direct reflection of our relationship with God. Jesus, if you'll remember, said, look, at the final day, there are going to be some of you who I'm just going to say, I don't know you. And some of you, I'm going to say, I did know you. And he's going to say, well, what do you mean? So, well, there are some days where I'm going to say, look, I was hungry, you didn't feed me. I was thirsty, you didn't give me anything to drink. I was naked, you didn't give me clothes. I was sick, you didn't come visit me. I was in prison, you didn't visit me. And they'll say, wait, Jesus, where were you in all those things? If you were at the door and you had a name tag that said Jesus, I would have opened it. I would have fed you, gave you a Big Mac, gave you my Nikes. Jesus, I would have done stuff for you. He said, well, you didn't do it for any of the least of these brothers of mine. All these other people around you who have needs and desires. That's why when Jesus is asked what the greatest commandment is, it's not just to love God, but it's to love people. There's a direct relationship between our relationship with people and our relationship with God. That's what I just said. One of the things that kind of gets overlooked in this whole story is Moses' anger problem. We kind of treat Moses as this almost deity type of character, right? Charlton Heston coming down the mountain with his giant stone tablets. But what happens when Moses pleads for the people and then goes down to see them? Do you remember? Takes the tablets, Moses smash, right? That's what he does. Breaks the first edition. And not just that. A lot of times we think the story is there. But if you've read chapter 5, if you've read through Exodus, you know he gets down there, he sees all these people running around because they have no structure, no rules. All these people living just on relationship, running around, acting foolish, becoming a laughing stock. And he says, hey, anybody who wants to follow God, come here. He gets a few people together. He says, I want you to kill everybody who's running around. So about 3,000 people were killed. 3,000 people! 3,000, 3 Mazans worth of people killed. And we go, wait a minute. Wait, Moses, you're the man. Moses, what are you doing? Well, that whole little act where he says, all right, come together, we're going to kill a bunch of people. God didn't tell him to do that. Moses has a little bit of an anger problem. Remember, when Moses was a young man in his 20s, he killed an Egyptian. Then he comes down and he breaks God's commandment. The first thing that God had ever written, and Moses throws a tantrum and breaks it. Later on, Moses is going to try and provide for the people who are constantly complaining, and he's trying to get water from a rock, and God said, just hit the rock once and water will come out. And the people are complaining, and they're on their case all the time. Moses, 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 give us water, give us water. And so Moses, he smacks the rock 7 times. And it seems like Moses doesn't get in trouble. That's what it seems like. But God has a purpose for Moses' life. And as we know, choices have consequences. And Moses will face his consequences of his anger. Relationships reveal. So God gets everything lined up. Okay, Moses, go back up the mountain, I'll make you a new set. Goes up, gets a new set of tablets, brings them down for the people so they can have order and structure and guidelines, so they can have rules. Remember when he said, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then you'll be my treasured possession. Obey me, follow the rules, and keep this relationship and we'll be good. It's both and. And so he says, listen, I want you to build a tabernacle. Everybody say tabernacle. Tabernacle. Now look to the neighbor on your left and say tabernacle. I love when people go. The tabernacle was a big tent, okay? A big tent. It was the first church. It was meant to be mobile because the church is always on the move. And in the very middle was a smaller tent called the Holy of Holies, the most holy place. And only one person was allowed to go in there. The high priest, he was allowed to convene and talk with God on behalf of the people. And then he would deliver messages on behalf of God to the people. Because as we learned in the text, the people were terrified of God. He's too big, too scary for them. We just want to talk to people. So they would build a tabernacle, and it says after they got this place built, after they had the rules and the relationship figured out, then God's presence, his big pillar of cloud, his pillar of fire, rests on the Holy of Holies to symbolize that God is here. God is here. God. See, rules together with relationship leads to reunion. Rules together with relationship leads to reunion. That's the goal, right? When God is weaving together his upper story, his grand master plan of how this is going to work, remember the whole point, the core, the passion of his creation was because he wanted wanted to be with us. That's why he built this nation, to try and get back to that point so that he could be with us. And so he has to have both. We have to have both. It wasn't until the people of Israel had a set of rules and they began to realize they needed a relationship that God said, okay, I'm going to live right here. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves, of course, because this isn't just an upper story, it's not just a lower story of the historical events that happened in the Bible, it's about what happens here, too. I have a really strong urge to go, "Mah!" I need sleep. What happens here, the question we have to ask is God here? In Park Street Church, in Mazan, when I go home, when you go home, when we go to work, when we go to school, when we go get groceries, when we go on the field, when we go on the course, when we go anywhere, at the mall, Walmart, wherever we're at, is God here? And if we can't answer that question in the positive, yeah, God's here, obviously. See, there's a noticeable thing there. There's a pillar of cloud. God's presence is clearly here. You can feel it. Then maybe we're off on one of those two things. Maybe we're too focused on the rules. Everybody's got to march a certain way, to a certain tune, to a certain beat, in a certain uniform. But the relationship side is growing cold. Or maybe we're so about the love that we say, I don't need accountability. I don't need commitment to make this relationship work. The Apostle Paul once said, so should we just go on sinning so that grace can abound? Do we just keep on breaking the rules so that God will give us more and more love? He says, by no means. In fact, the Greek language is so strong there, it's actually like, heck no. Is God here? Jesus came full of grace and truth. And we believe that this church, that every church, the global church, is the body, everybody say the body, the body of Christ. That we are called to impact, to change this world. To be a reflection and a revelation of God's love. Jesus came full of grace and truth. Love and rules. Covenant and commands. Our relationships help us to meet God. Our rules help us to live that relationship out. To experience Him on an everyday basis. If we're ever going to change the world, if we're ever going to fulfill our part of this story, we have to be able to answer this question. Is God here? This morning, we pray for your presence to be revealed. And God, that's a lot to ask. Moses asked to see your glory. I don't know that I'm that bold. But I pray that we would be able to see your presence, to feel it, to experience it, to live it. Here in our church, in our homes, in our lives, as individuals and as families and friends and neighbors. Co-workers, classmates. Father, we want to be reunited. If we aren't meeting the commitments, the disciplines, the rules, the guidelines that you've given us for life, then help us to step it up. Not because we have to, not because some guy in a suit and tie asked us to, but because we love you, because we have a relationship with you. God, if we ever focus too much on the rules, too much on the guidelines, the commands, if we become too rigid in this thing we call faith, then I pray that you would break our hearts for what breaks yours, that we would feel the relationship again, that it would spark something inside of us, that would chase after you like lovesick children. God, we know we need both, that we are saved by faith. Father, help us to be bold, help us to be strengthened, help us to be disciplined and committed to follow you, no matter what it takes. Because you've shown us, we've seen what you've done to death and sin. You conquered it on the cross. Now it's time for us to follow. Father, thank you for Jesus. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.